Rodgi, you just heard him say there is no mandate for Vijay Mallya to return. Mallya saying the time was not right for him to come back to India. That was apparently according to an interview that Vijay Mallya has now denied. But we decided to reach out to two legal experts, A. Sundaram and Sanjay Hegde. I began by asking Sundaram as to what he made of this entire situation, whether Vijay Mallya does have any compulsion to return or not. We've heard what the Attorney General had to say.
Everyone seemed to wait till the horse had bolted, and after the horse has bolted, expects it to voluntarily come back. And I said this from day one when it first happened. I said, I think we got another Lalit Modi scenario. The fact of the matter is that the climate in issues involving huge debts due to banks or huge debts due to the government when not paid has often resulted in criminal proceedings and incarceration of the individuals. So I'm sure that Mallya would be quite concerned as to whether his return is going to be accompanied sooner or later by a possible arrest, in which case I do not see him ever feeling that it's the correct time to come back to India. The only correct time to come back to India for him is if he's in a position to make good the defaults and to work out some kind of settlement with the banks and arrive at an amount which he will pay and actually does pay it. Now, in the absence of that, going by what he said, I don't know what will be the right time for him to come back, according to him, in his own interest. And that is unfortunately the whole malaise which we have in this country.
Yeah, Mr. Sundaram, and let's not forget, he's already come out with a press release saying he wants to relocate to London. At this juncture, I'd like to introduce our in-house legal expert, Ashmit Kumar. Hi, Ashmit. I know you want to take the discussion forward. First of all, Vijay Mallya is pretty clear. He doesn't want to ever move back to India. He wants to live in London.
Indeed, he's made that very clear. In fact, what he's also clarified is that he's not an absconder as far as this issue is concerned. And on that issue, Mr. Hegde, I'll come across to you. Not an absconder. Let's get the semantics out of the way. There is an ED summons that he's looking at. Hyderabad-based court, in fact, has issued an NBW, non-bailable warrant against him. Should he fail to, in fact, comply with these summons, with the warrants, could he then be termed as an absconder?
Well, there is nothing called an absconder in law in that sense. It's a legalism which we use rather freely. After if he fails to obey a warrant or a warrant can't be executed, then finally he becomes a proclaimed offender under the Criminal Procedure Code, if proceedings are taken that way. But in normal parlance, he is a person who has not yet evaded or failed to answer a summons as yet, because once the summons is served and there is a date, the date is in the future. If he misses that date, then further steps would have to be taken by the ED. At that stage, it may be more right to call him a proclaimed offender if and when such a proclamation is in fact made. Absconder, you could abscond in many ways. You could be avoiding a summons, you could be evading one, or the summons having been served, or a warrant having been served, you've simply chosen to ignore it.
Mr. Sundaram, just taking from my colleague Ashmit's question, simply put, under what situation or under what condition can Vijay Mallya be brought back? Can any of the investigative agencies, be it the CBI or ED or even the government or MCA stepping in, can there be a situation where Vijay Mallya can be forced to come back, or do you see this going the Lalit Modi way?
Well, the fact of the matter is, if he is living in England under a permitted visa and he is permitted to reside there, then obviously the Indian authorities' jurisdiction would not extend to arresting him there, but they would necessarily need the cooperation of the British law enforcement agencies. And there's the rub, really, because the extradition process in England, if it is taken resort to, requires a detailed satisfaction of the English authorities that a prima facie case has been made out in one of the listed kinds of crimes which they would recognize for the purpose of extradition. Now, as to whether here, in the absence of finding that there is actual siphoning of money, actual diversion of funds going on the basis that it's a limited liability company, which then went into financial doldrums. And if that is all the cases, then I do not see how they would ever expect to, without his voluntarily coming back, expect to get him back with the assistance of the English authorities.